Welcome to Claim Your Confidence, a podcast that will introduce you to the most powerful people in the world. No matter what obstacles you face, Claim Your Confidence will inspire and motivate you to go after the life you want. Are you ready to claim your confidence?
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Claim Your Confidence. I'm Lydia Fenet, coming to you from Newsstand Studios in New York City. It's a beautiful day in Rockefeller Center. It seems that we might actually be closing in on some summer weather finally. So fingers crossed. Today, I have Amy Odell, who is joining me. She's not in the studio. Amy, where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining you from my home in Westchester, shortly outside of the city.
So not too far from New York. So probably a similar setting where you are. But for those of you who have not met Amy, of which I'm sure there are very few, or have gotten to know her work, which is probably one of the biggest works that came out this spring, Amy is a journalist, author, editor, and media consultant. She just published her second book, which is a New York Times bestseller, Anna, the Biography, which is a biography of Anna Wintour. And I have so many questions for you, Amy. But let's start at the beginning. I know that we actually met face to face, probably, I guess it was about a month ago at the Simon & Schuster 100th anniversary event. And I was immediately taken. Amy, if you see her afterwards in news articles, has these huge brown eyes, and she kind of looks a little bit like a movie character you might have seen at some point in your life, like absolutely stunningly beautiful. And I talked to Amy for a while about her job. You told me that you grew up in Austin, Texas. Is that right?
I did.
What was it like to grow up in Austin? Because it's a very different town now.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny that it's cool and hip and like chic now. And I have to say, I see the changes when I go home. The neighborhood that I grew up in, and this is happening all over, not just where I'm from, but like the houses are all being knocked down and people are building like these glass boxes. Yeah. Not my personal style of house, but it's almost like a slightly more spread out version of the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah.
In Austin. So it's very weird, but I think that people are starting to leave, and I wonder if it's maybe because they don't know what summer feels like.
I know,
and like,
so
you really
true.
can't, in the Northeast, we stay inside in the winter, and down there you stay inside in the summer. Like, you just can't be out unless you're swimming or, in an heavily air-conditioned mall or something.
It's so true. So what were you like as a child? Were you a bookworm?
Yeah, I love to read. I played the piano. I did a lot of music. I played the piano and the flute. I wasn't really that sporty. I'm an introvert, and I probably did a lot of reading. I did love magazines so much. At what age did we start reading magazines? Now it's all different because you would start reading, social media? Is that the new magazine?
I mean, I guess.
Maybe when you're a tween, you would start getting like YM or Teen, 17.
Yes.
I did spend a lot of time reading those, and through those, I became interested in fashion, which I now cover as a journalist, although it's very different covering it in New York City versus like being, a girl in Austin who wore like cut off shorts every day and sandals or flip flops, thinking you know what it's like, and then coming here and seeing kind of what it's really like. I think I read a lot. I remember reading The Babysitter's Club, Sweet Valley High, Jane Austen. I actually remember during the summer when I didn't have school, I would stay up so late, like as late as I could, just reading, whatever was around. For some reason, I remember it being a lot of Jane Austen.
Just like all those romance, the flowy dresses and the British countryside.
Yeah, and probably what we would call, chick lit. I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I think those books are great. I probably read a lot of those. And I actually started reading nonfiction, probably when I was a teenager. And I read mostly nonfiction now.
Yeah. It's interesting to think back to a little girl in Austin, Texas, and just reading fashion magazines and thinking about what fashion meant. At that time when you were growing up, were you still dressing in cutoff jeans, or were you the kind of person who was styling things? Because I remember having Rebecca Minkoff on, and she was telling me how she used to sort of style everything. It was like she would be gluing something or sewing something. Was that the kind of fashion you liked, or was it just reading about it?
No, I mean, what I had access to, both, in terms of my budget and allowance and what was around or what I knew about, was the mall.
Yeah.
It was like Express and Contempo casuals. Yeah. I did not, I grew up middle class, and I didn't have money to buy anything designer. I didn't know anything about vintage. I didn't know like how you would go and find something. You know what I mean? I don't think I even really knew about brands.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what brands I was aware of.
Yeah.
And, you think in the 90s, like Prada was probably just becoming a thing. Like, it was just different.
Yeah.
You
it
know
was
what I
really
mean?
different. I think about that now, actually, with my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's 11, who has this unbelievable understanding of brands. Probably because I like brands. I live in New York. I've lived here for 25 years. It is very much part of the sort of culture that I've grown up in this luxury world. A lot of my friends worked in industries that were different brands. So she's heard them since she was little, but it's been really curious to me to listen to her talking about other brands. She doesn't have social media. She doesn't have a phone yet. And so it is incredible how ubiquitous these brands become because of social media. And it doesn't matter where you are now. The 12-year-olds all know about Sephora. They all know about Roberta Roller Rabbit. They all know about Stony Clover, all these brands that are literally just marketing to them 24/7. It's kind of what we had with magazines where you would get that once a month, or maybe you'd see it in the dentist's office, but you certainly weren't getting that 24/7, and you weren't walking down the street being like, oh, I've seen this, because it's in every major city in America. So it's a very different time, certainly, than it was when we were growing up. So what brought you to New York eventually then?
I will also say growing up, and I'll answer your question in a second, but Sex in the City was happening.
Yeah.
When I was a teen in high school, I think. And that also opened up the world of fashion, like for me and probably a lot of people. But moving to New York City, so my parents are both from New York, and I had grown up coming here to visit family. And I feel from a young age, having visited New York City, that it was the place I wanted to live. And then again, Sex in the City was happening. It made the city very alluring. And I remember visiting NYU with my mom when we were visiting colleges and thinking about where I wanted to go. And I like, as soon as I got off the train, I think it was at Christopher Street, I loved it. I was like, oh my God. Like, I don't know if I had ever really walked around the Village before. I found it to be intoxicating, and that's where I wanted to go.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same way when I saw New York for the first time. It was like, I think my mom said when I was 10, I turned to her, we were here, and I said, I'm going to live here one day. My mom was like, I didn't have a single doubt from that minute on. I mean, little did she know that I meant forever, but there you go. So you got to NYU. What was it like coming from Austin, Texas?
I had been here before, so it wasn't like I don't think it was a culture shock. And, I think I found it to be a relief in a lot of ways to be in New York, because Austin was, I think, a lot more conservative. And culturally, I think I identified with New York a lot more than Austin and Texas.
In what way?
And now Austin is like politically, honestly, Austin is blue now. I don't know that it was when I was growing up, but I just felt like, like culturally, politically, it was easier to kind of find people who aligned with me.
So a lot of people are graduating right now from college, and I love the stories of your jobs and how you got them. Can you talk to me about your internship at New York Magazine, as in it didn't happen, but can you tell me a little bit about how you got your first internship and really your sort of getting jobs along the way? Because I do love these parts of your story.
Sure. As a journalist, I don't think it works the same way at all, because so many publications have folded and what journalists do has changed so much in some ways. But I was an editor I applied before I became an editor at the NYU school paper called the Washington Square News. I had applied to like a million internships, because journalism is a career where people are not really looking at your GPA, they're looking at your work. So those internships are really important. Mm-hmm. NYU had like a great journalism program. And what was so good about it is how clued in they were to the industry in New York. And, they could help you figure out where to apply for internships and all of that. So I applied to probably like every Condé Nast fashion or women's magazine. I don't even remember. I did so many applications. I didn't ever even get like interviews. I got one interview, I think, for Brides, and I honestly flubbed it because I was so young and like scared and shy, and I didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, so then I figured, okay, well, if I can't get an internship, and probably I did not realize this at the time, probably a lot of those spots went to like Nepo babies, publishing Nepo babies, which I'm not. My father was a math professor, and my mom was a consultant in Austin. I had no connections. Yeah. And I got a job at the school paper. I think I started as a reporter for them. Then I became a news editor. And after I had that experience and I had some clips, like published articles, I was able to get stuff and get interviews and be taken more seriously. So the key internship for me was at the New York Observer, which at the time was a salmon colored broadsheet that came out every Wednesday.
Yeah, I
It
remember.
doesn't exist like that anymore, but that was the kind of thing that like the media industry was really into and clued into and loved reading. And I happened to be there on Thursday and Friday, and the paper closed Tuesday night. So Thursday and Friday was sort of like their least busy days. And on those days, there wasn't a lot to do. So I would fact check restaurant reviews, which were the things that were always done kind of early, and go through like the inbox. And they were like, if there's an event invitation in the inbox that you think you should cover, let us know. And I believe that one of the things that came through were Project Runway auditions.
Oh.
Take yourself back to like Tim Gunn, Heidi Klum, like Project Runway being very, very popular.
Heidi Klum is married to Seal. Yeah.
And I went and I said, can I cover it? And they were like, sure. So I went on like a weekend. I had time. I was like, in college, go on a weekend and do it. So I interviewed Tim Gunn, and I'm sure what I filed was kind of a mess, but they liked it and they published it. So then I started, once you do it one time, they'll send you out again and again. I got a lot of things published, which was great. And that after that, I got a job at this website. I don't even know if it exists, called Juicy, JEWCY.com.
Oh, okay.
It was like it's supposed to be like a hip Jewish culture online, like a slate. It was a bizarre job. It was very small. And then I got fired from that. And
Why did you get fired from that?
There was another person on staff who was really disparaging of something that I had written. And then the editor-in-chief had emailed the criticism to the entire staff. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but I stood up for myself. And then I was fired. And that was actually kind of a great thing that happened to me, because then I went back to really reporting instead of doing assistant nonsense in an office.
Yeah.
And being treated with so little respect. I don't even want to repeat what this person said. It like saying it today, it would come off so much worse actually than it did even then. In like 2007. While I was at this job, I was freelancing for New York Magazine, doing party coverage, kind of the same thing I did at the Observer. So you would go out. I don't know that it's like this anymore because I'm in Westchester and I'm a bit disconnected from the premiere scene in New York, but there would always be something going on like that you could go and cover as a reporter with celebrities or notable people, be it like a movie premiere or, I don't know, a political event or a charity fundraiser. Like there was just so many things. You could talk to kind of anybody. It could be a New York personage or it could be a huge movie star like Anne Hathaway. Like they wanted it all.
Yeah.
So I would go, or a fashion designer. Like at one event, I interviewed a Kennedy and Nicole Miller. And then it was actually very, see before like what I said about being an introvert. It was very hard for me to do that.
I was going to say that as I'm listening to this. I mean, I would think that for anyone, I'm a complete extrovert, and it's still to me at that age would seem difficult to walk into a crowded party and stick a microphone in someone's face and ask them questions. Like, where did you get the confidence to do that?
I don't know. You know what it was? I was just so afraid of like messing it up. And this has probably like been driving me my whole career. Like I was just really afraid of disappointing or not doing it. And
who, your boss at the time?
Yeah, because it's tough. And I had a wonderful boss when I was doing this job, who's now a reporter at the Washington Post, but Jada Yuan. But yeah, I mean, and like to her credit, to New York Magazine's credit, they had high standards. They wanted great stuff. And so I learned so much doing it. But I was always just really nervous. And there's also, a public aspect to my job. I'm here talking on a podcast. When you publish your work, you want people to read it.
Yeah.
And that also is very nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I'm sure. But it is interesting because there's been this complete change from, we talk about magazines, but I remember in New York Magazine, the party line. I mean, that was the hottest thing and everybody wanted to be in it. And you would choose what, like 6 or 7 people? I mean, it wasn't a ton of people.
So Jada would pick the people and she would have people like me go out and like talk to all the people and try to get quotes for that page. And then there was Daily Intelligencer, which was like little short items. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Couple hundred words that, sometimes I would get published there, like recapping a party or something somebody said. So those were really good clips for me as a young journalist starting out. Again, I don't know what the equivalent of all of this is today, because I don't even think New York Magazine has those sections anymore. And I remember when I interviewed for my full-time job at New York Magazine with Adam Moss, and I was saying that publicists loved party lines. And he was like, really?
Yeah, they did. Absolutely. I feel like because all my friends were young, eager PR girls at that point. And so they were desperate to get their clients. They would shove you in front of anything at that point to try to get, some one-upmanship on everyone else. And you'll remember in the 2007s, there was this socialite craze in New York City as well.
Yep.
So you had the early influencers, which I like to sort of say, and I think of my age group, it was Tinsley, Tinsley
Yep.
Mortimer. It was like we were out every single night, whether at galas or there would be like 4, 5, 6 store parties in a row. And it was just this huge crowd of people who would move from place to place. And Patrick McMullen was the only photographer. Billy worked with him at that point before he launched BFA. And that was the scene. That was every single night in my 20s. People will often say, like, how do you know that person? I'm like, because I went to 5 cocktail parties a night with them for 7 years, honestly. But that's kind of the way it worked. And everybody was vying to get into Party Line, and everybody wanted to be quoted or sort of seen and shown. And I always think back when I look at social media and you look at the people who are influencing social media, I'm like, oh, we had that. It was just a much more curated version because Patrick was choosing the photos and everything was highly glossed and edited, but you had no say in the matter. It was all about what other people were choosing for you, whereas obviously social media is different now. How long were you with New York Magazine?
Well, I did the freelancing, I don't know, for 1 to 2 years, maybe a year. And then I was hired to write the cut, and that I did for about 4 years.
And talk to us about the cut, because again, very, very cutting edge. Everything you were doing you're such an aughts baby in many ways.
I know.
It's like anyone who's in that age group will know all of these things if they were in New York or around New York at that time. Talk to us about the cut.
Yeah, I know. It's funny because the world felt more niche. And now everything feels like it wants to be mass, but it didn't want to be mass at that time. And like New York Magazine was... It was a magazine that like people whereas from in Austin might not have heard of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still like that because like Vulture and The Cut have become these like big sprawling, in a really good way, publications that are designed to reach outside of New York and, maybe even globally. But so The Cut had been running and I had been working for it as like a Fashion Week blog just for Fashion Week in New York, which is something that has also really changed a lot.
Yeah.
Like in the Bryant Park days. And, again, for New York Magazine, you could go to the shows, you could talk to somebody like Simon Doonan and get a little article out of that. So I had been in my party reporting capacity, contributing little items for that. And then they decided to turn it into a blog that ran full time. And I ended up being able to throw my hat in the ring. I had been covering a lot of fashion things already for them, for Party Lines. And, I got the job, and I think the reason I was able to get it quickly, quite honestly, is because I had another job offer to do something similar, which I have found in my media career, kind of the way that you get things done for yourself is to get another job offer. I really hate to say it, but that's what it was like. And
I think that's in any career, to be honest.
Maybe, yeah.
People love competition.
Yeah, it's like they don't realize what they have until they think they might lose you. All the people in New York Mag were really so smart and great, and I have so much respect for all of them. But yeah, so then I had to turn this thing that was running 2 weeks out of the year into a full-time blog. And at the time, like a blog, you would post items 10 to 15 times a day. And that's when I really learned what the fashion industry was like, because going to like Project Runway events or I don't know, movie premieres or whatever, like it just wasn't, or a show here and there, it just wasn't the same as like having to read Women's Wear Daily every day and understand the designers and where they were working and, like learn who some of the other people were. And I kind of figured out that like once you figure out who the fashion people are, you can write, you're kind of going to be okay and you can write about it. But yeah, I really had to learn a lot about the industry, and it was really different from my conception of it growing up.
In what way?
I guess I just didn't even realize there were all these people who existed, who were important. I know that sounds naive, but like Karine Breitfeld, who was still really big, and really cool at the time, 'cause she was running Vogue Paris before it was French Vogue. And then like, I don't know, I just didn't know about like all the brands that existed. There are people who I was included into the fashion spot where people would have such passionate discussions about models and their latest photo shoots, and also the kind of the snobbery of it.
Yeah.
I wasn't really clued into that dynamic, and how the seating at fashion shows was such a indication of where you ranked in the industry and all of that. So it was very eye-opening.
It's like that amazing scene in Devil Wears Prada, which I think people come back to time and time again, where Meryl Streep's in there with Anne Hathaway's character, and they're discussing the cerulean blue sweater. And she's like, you think that this wasn't chosen for you, like that sweater you bought in a bargain basement bin. And there's so many levels to that because, again, having been in New York with so many of my friends working in fashion, many of them working at Vogue at the time, there was this incredible dynamic and hierarchy that existed in the fashion world that I truly think in many ways that film kind of brought to the masses, because people sort of understood for the first time it is for some people a religion. Many people who don't live in New York really think of it as like, I get dressed in the morning, I go out. They don't think about the trends, the seasons. And living in New York, as long as I've lived in New York, one thing I've always loved is you can see what's coming out on the streets. And I live downtown. So it's like you start to see that months out. Like I can remember a couple of years ago walking down the street and seeing a girl wearing it almost looked like a Chanel bralette with a little skirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, where are her clothes? Like, it was just like one of the things. I'm like, why is she wearing a bra in the middle of the day? And then sure enough, within a year, you start to see that. And then it's like, no one wears clothes anymore. And like, that's the fashion. And it's just amazing that the streets of New York sort of every day is a different runway. And that all trickles down from the designers who are designing and putting models in that, who are wearing them out. And then people are seeing it. And, in this day and age, it's out immediately because one image of someone, of one of the Kardashian sisters walking through New York City and whatever Balenciaga puts her in is all of a sudden what everybody wants to wear for the next couple of weeks. So it is amazing to understand what fashion is and the impact that it has in a place like New York and then everywhere else as a result of that.
I mean, the way I was writing about it was because it was New York Magazine, and it was more niche, and it was okay to be niche. And I was never like allowed to look at Chartbeat, which is like the live traffic stats, which I had in subsequent jobs, which was really could be torture, quite honestly, because traffic became so important. But they weren't worried about traffic. I would get like a daily or weekly report, but they didn't want the writers to worry about it. They just wanted us to do good stuff that we believed in and like cover the news through our own lens. And I also should say there were so many excellent writers and journalists there, but two who really influenced me at the time were Chris Rouser, who is currently an editor at Bloomberg Pursuits, and Jessica Pressler, who wrote the story that became the Hustlers movie with Jennifer Lopez, and the story that became the Anna Delvey Netflix series. And they were writing for Daily Intelligencer, the blog at the time, and they were so good and so funny. And I really just tried to copy them. Yeah. And through doing that, I found my own voice as a writer.
That's so interesting. And how much confidence did it take to sort of find that voice and that ability to use humor and to use all the things that make your writing so effortless and fun to read?
Well, thank you. It doesn't feel effortless to get it on the page sometimes, and also like at the time that I was starting, we introduced comments. I mean, this sounds so dated to talk about, but we introduced comments. I don't even know if we had share buttons or like buttons, but all these things that you can use as a measure of how good of a job you're doing, even though who cares what some random person says in a comment. But I didn't know that at the time. I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
I was naive, as I've said repeatedly. I think being naive actually helped me find my voice because I didn't know how things worked. I didn't know how sensitive brands were. I mean, that was a big learning curve for me, how to write in such a way that you can retain the advertising while also being critical and being fair and all of that. So I had a big education in that, and I thank my editors for that. I think through naivete, I found it. And then, when you see that it's working and you're building an audience, I think that gives you some confidence because that's really what the job is all about. And now it's totally different because you have to build, like I'm independent now, so I have to build my own audience. So I have to do it, without the strength of the New York Mag brand.
Yeah.
Which is really tough.
Before you went out on your own, you went to Cosmopolitan.com.
Mm-hmm.
And that must have been a steep learning curve too.
Yes, I worked at Buzzfeed and then I went to Hearst to run the Cosmopolitan digital side of the brand. So the website, all the social channels, video, live video, there were like like ceaseless things that would come around that we would have to try to be successful at. And that's like the social media death of media in a way. Like it was so tough. And then that job was really more about like editing, managing, learning how to operate in a corporate environment, which really wasn't for me.
Yeah. After all those years, kind of in a different environment, I suspect at that point, you're sort of like, okay, so what's next? So then you left to go out on your own. How did the book about Anna Wintour come to you? When did you start sensing that was something that you were going to write?
Yeah, so I thought that I would do another essay book, quite honestly, because my first book was an essay book, and then the editor who had acquired that book at Gallery at Simon and Schuster, Karen Mergus, who's wonderful.
Oh yeah, she was my editor for my second book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
She said they were looking for someone to do a biography on Anna Wintour. And I thought that was a huge opportunity, for any journalist, because this is someone who has been an enigma for her entire career, which now has been, let's see, it's 2024, 36 years, editor-in-chief of Vogue. Exactly, just about and she's been an enigma for that time. So I knew that there was an opportunity to really pull the curtain back on who she was with an in-depth biography.
And so how do you go about writing a book like that? Like, where do you begin? Is that something that she's interested in doing? Is that something that you're interested in doing, or there is just a marketplace for it and you raised your hand and said, I'm going to go and try? I mean, how does that even begin to work?
I had to figure this all out. Writing a biography is really different from anything I had ever done before, actually. And the process that I sort of figured out, not that I did it all in this order, but you read everything you can about the person, you watch everything you can about the person, and then you make a list of who you might be able to interview, and then you start interviewing them. And then after you've interviewed so many people, you rate it.
When you go to interview people, are you getting an okay yes?
No.
Okay,
No.
that's what I'm wondering. I mean, because someone like Anna Wintour, unless you know her, which I do not, but I feel like I've had a lot of friends who work for her. I do feel like there's almost like a privacy shield around her. There's a great amount of respect for her. People who work for her and love what she does. But I think for everyone else, there seems to be this sort of like Meryl Streep Devil Wears Prada patina that she wears, and you're not supposed to go past that. So how do you get to be the person who does that? And does anyone answer your call and say yes? I mean, talk about confidence. That's got to be that first call.
Yeah.
Friends has got to be a real confidence buster if they say no, right?
Well, you just do it. You just got to do it because you don't know what cooperation you might get from the subject. So I just started calling people, and I was calling people who were or who had been pretty close to her, just getting no. Because, yeah, as you said, people are very nervous. I would not say everybody loves her, though many people do. And so what I decided to do at the time, Robert Caro, the famous LBJ biographer, had published his memoir. And I read it because I was like, I just don't know what to do.
You're like, where do I go?
What do I do? And his method, as he laid it out, and this is not unique to him, but it was new to me. You kind of think of the person with concentric circles around them. And, the first circle is family. Then it's close friends. And you go out, maybe it's close colleagues, and working out from there. So he says you start in the outermost circle and you work your way into the center. So I figured, what's a good way to do that? Well, why don't I just go back to the earliest part of her life and talk to those people because, they've not worked with her at Vogue maybe, and they, and that worked. So I just kind of chronologically worked my way through. And then, of course, her team found out that I was working on this book. And they were great. I talked to them on the phone, and told them I'm writing
does that
this.
come in the form of an email or a phone
Yeah, it
call
was an
to you?
email.
And did you sleep that night, be honest?
Well, I sent it to my editors, and I think the call happened very quickly because I was like, I just got to get this over with.
Oh my God.
And I will say, to get the interviews of these people, I cold called.
Yeah.
That was the way to do it, was to just cold call and hope that someone would chat with you. And quite often that works. So if there are aspiring journalists out there, you got to pick up the phone. And I get a lot of requests for comment for various things now from writers, and they ask for email a lot of the time, or like, do you want to do email? And it's like, no, just get on the phone. Like, you got to pick up the phone. I mean, sometimes an email comment is perfectly fine, but I think picking up the phone is really important. So, because you always have a better conversation and get better quotes. So after the conversation, what they decided to do is not make Anna available. She respectfully declined, according to her rep. And they said, do you want to talk to her closest friends, basically? And I said, sure, of course. And do you want to send over a list, or do you want us to? I said, why don't you send over a list? It was an extraordinary list of names, including like Tom Ford and Tory Burch and Serena Williams.
Oh, you're like
Anna Wintour's the best friends. Okay, great. And then, some Vogue editors I was familiar with, like Hamish Bowles and Virginia Smith. And so I talked just about all of those people. And that was really extraordinary to have that access and that opportunity. And I think very savvy on her part, really, to handle it that way.
Yeah, you'd almost expect nothing less. It's actually what I wanted you to say in a weird way, that, even though she couldn't be there, she at some point had some say in it, in a way, in terms of putting in people who she respected enough and felt like she could be represented, perhaps.
And they had great stories and great insights about her.
Yeah.
They really did. And I interviewed more than 250 people when the book was done. But what I learned about her is that she doesn't like talking about herself.
That's really interesting. So funny, someone who's made her entire career in media, it's amazing that she doesn't like to talk about herself to other people.
Well, she's very reserved. And, as many people know from, let's say, watching The Devil Wears Prada or whatever, and there's documentaries, et cetera, on her. She's also been at the center of a lot of controversy, and that wouldn't be comfortable to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's easier to be an enigma when you let other people talk about you and you don't enter the fray in that way as well.
Even so, I was able to uncover what really happened with a lot of controversies at Vogue, and I talked about it in the book, the profile that they ran of the Syrian first lady, calling the elections there democratic, these things that became really, really big stories where we kind of didn't really know what was going on. I was able to figure out what really happened. And, so the access helped in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary book. It's such a good read. And I love your writing. I love reading it. It goes very quickly. You can
Thank you so much.
Sit down with a big, thick book and think, is this going to be something that engages me? But I really enjoyed reading it. I guess my only other question about that entire process is, as the writer, how do you stay impartial? At some point, you must either feel in your bones that you are really loving the subject or you're not. Or maybe somebody has, you have a conversation with someone that's really unflattering, or on the flip side, something that's completely effusive. How do you maintain, which I think you did so well in the book, that objectivity? What do you do to make that happen?
I don't know. I don't think I quoted that many people with an opinions, I guess. I tried to stick to the stories and telling the events of what happened, with some, you have to kind of guide the reader, offer some insight. Yeah. And I had help from my editors, where they felt I wasn't being objective. They would point it out and we would change it. Mm-hmm. And, I think that it's I have heard feedback from readers that they appreciated the objectivity in the book. Whereas a lot of biographies have a very strong slant one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel like I got that same reaction from critics. I stopped reading reviews very quickly in the publication process. But I do feel like that was a common criticism, was that I didn't have she's horrible or she's great. And it's she's a human being. She's a human being. And I think all human beings have strengths and weaknesses, and we're all flawed, and so I think that a biography should help people understand what a person is like and why they made the decisions that they made. And I think that I hope that my book did that, but I also think that I wonder if this idea that we need to have such a strong slant on someone like Anna Wintour, and there are other subjects I have very strong opinions on that I've shared, but I wonder if part of that has to do with social media and, what travels on social media. It's a very strong opinion one way or the other. And I wonder if it's, people are just used to that and crave that, from all the media that they consume.
Yeah, I think that that's a very good point. I think in anything you see on social media, again, it's all about you're clicking on, right? You're getting more of what you think. So it makes it easy to have an opinion and have that verified and validated over and over again. So as I said, I am a huge fan of your book, and I hope that everyone
you so much.
listening goes out and gets it immediately. I think it's just a wonderful read and really takes you into New York fashion and the fashion world, which you obviously know so well after so many years of covering it from so many different angles. What do you think that your next step will be? Will you be a journalist forever?
I hope so. The reason I say I hope so is because who knows where it's all going with AI and God, I don't know. I mean, so now speaking of the evolution of the industry, so I write a Substack, which you can find at amyodell.substack.com. It's a fashion and culture Substack. Which is kind of my point of view of fashion and celebrity and all of that. And that's been really fun. And I hope to publish more books. And I post as much as I can on social media, primarily Instagram and TikTok. So you can find me there too.
I'm so impressed that you're on TikTok. I feel like I'm almost hoping it goes away just because I've never gotten on it.
It actually gets banned. I mean, I think many people would be relieved. Well, I'm lucky. I don't really earn money from it unless people see my TikToks and buy my book, but I can't measure that.
Yeah.
There's so many self-promotional tools that it's like, how can you possibly do all of them? But they also feel it's like essential. Like it matters. People are looking at that to see like, are you going to be able to market your own book? Like, if it went away, I don't think I'd be that sad about it. Although I don't think that Meta needs any more help.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is a lot of work to make those videos.
It is a lot of work. I know. I feel like people don't really understand, if you're not on social media as much, how much work it is just to do the bare minimum. And as you said, especially as an author, I will never forget my first meeting at Gallery. We were published by the same imprint at Simon & Schuster. We talked a lot about marketing and publicity, and really one of the drivers is, what is your platform? It's very much about what is your platform. So I say it all the time, unless you're John Grisham, you're selling your own books one by one. There's no question. So if you are out there, be sure to pick up a copy of Anna, the biography. It's an exceptional book, and I know that anyone who reads it will love reading it. You've told us where we can find you, so I want to just say to the audience, one thing that I loved that you said when we were talking about it, when I said, what do you do when you're nervous and you have to go out there and make the calls, and you said, just do it, which is such a truism when it comes to confidence. You have to just do it sometimes, even if it isn't what you naturally feel like doing. So I hope for those of you who are listening right now, this is the week that you just do it, whatever that might be. And I hope that this podcast has given you the confidence to do it. So I'm Lydia Fenet. This is Claim Your Confidence. Thank you to Joe. Thank you to Tishman Speyer and to Newsstand Studios for having us in this special studio in the middle of Rockefeller Center, which I love so much. It's been a fantastic interview with Amy. Have a great week, and I look forward to being with you again next Tuesday.